About 2 years ago, my practice really hit a wall. I was feeling very burned out and exhausted and kind of just angry a lot. And so I went to see Venerable Children and I told her, I need to take a break. I need to leave. And she very skillfully told me that basically I'm going to take the same mind wherever I go and that I wouldn't know how to take a break. And I said to her, fair enough. How do I take a break? And she said to me, you need to figure out how to leave the high achievers neurotic society. And so part of my mind was like, that's a joke, okay? Like, we made it up as an in-joke, kind of. That was part of my mind's response. And the other part was like, that's all I've known my whole life. What am I supposed to do? So I asked her that, how? And she didn't answer that question. So I've kind of been sitting with it for about 2 years or so, and quite recently I could see those feelings of burnout and exhaustion starting to creep up again, but at least this time I could see, okay, that is an afflicted state of mind. It's not real. We don't have to listen to it, but then now what do you do with it? So I actually went back to thinking about the origin story of the high achievers neurotic society. And I realized it's not a very happy story. Venerable and I were in Singapore maybe in 2015 or 16, and someone had sent her an article from the Atlantic magazine, and it was entitled The Silicon Valley Suicides. And it was about a high school in Palo Alto where there had been a string of teenage suicides, all from the same school. And so the adults there, all the teachers, the parents involved were deeply devastated and really asking, what is going on in our community. And because all of them came from very successful tech families, all from Silicon Valley. The children get every possible opportunity you could imagine. They're all like being fed into Stanford and Ivy League schools, yet they were so deeply miserable. And I remember there was a therapist who worked with a client in the community, and she said it was an 8-year-old child. And so she spoke to the 8-year-old child and said, what would you like to be when you grow up? And the child said, a venture capitalist. And the therapist said, there is something deeply wrong in our community. So Venerable and I had a discussion about this article. She sent it to me, telling me to read it and think about it. I'm like, why? And then we had a discussion about the price of having a very privileged education, right? That externally looks like it's everything you might want, but it comes at a very high mental, emotional, and actually also a high social cost. So I remember, that was how we came up with this high achievers neurotic society, kind of as a way to talk about something quite sad. And then I went back to when I was 15, just thinking, what was I doing when I was 15 in high school? Because that was also the first year I ever felt very burned out and exhausted in my life at 15. So I decided to make a list of all the things I was doing then. Which I hadn't thought about for a while. So of course I was in one of these high achieving schools. So in Singapore, everyone takes previously, not anymore, like all students took the O-level exams, and the minimum subjects you had to take were 6 to progress to higher education. But in high-performing school, the minimum you must take is 8. Otherwise, why are you at that school? Then within high-performing school, I was in high-performing program. Everyone I knew took 9 or 10. And of course, as high achiever neurotic, I took 11, the maximum number anyone could take. But the academics is just the baseline, right? It's the minimum expectation. Why else would you be in that school? It's like a non-discussion. You have to have also a co-curricular activity. Please note, not extracurricular, co-curricular, as important as your academics. And in some ways, I was very fortunate that I found one that I loved, which was the drama club. But again, at high-performing school, you're not doing skits and mucking about, It's like you have to be doing something serious. So I was writing a full-length play under the tutorship of a professional playwright. There was a professional Chinese opera artiste at the school for the year, so there were many of us learning Chinese opera, and I was obsessed with Chinese opera. And for those of us who are excellent in the humanities, you could apprentice with a professor to write a research paper. So I was writing a research paper about Chinese opera. So there was that. There was the annual school show, and I had auditioned and gotten the lead role. And the importance of being earnest, I got to play a British man with the full-scale British accent for the whole time. And then the teacher and the drama club wanted all of us to have like team building activities. So everyone had to be in the puppet show. So I had to make a fish puppet and learn to manipulate it. Not very glamorous, but had to be the fish. The professional who was hired to direct the puppet theater show was doing a show outside of school. It was a 10-minute play, and it was with professionals. So I had, of course, auditioned for that. So I was in this 10-minute play with these professional actors, getting to perform this at a shopping mall. And then, of course, my best friend and I wrote our own stand-up comedy and performed it for the whole school. And we were a hit. We were a complete hit. And so because of that, I became extremely popular. So as you know, you have to excel in every single thing you do, right? And being popular is of paramount importance. So I was in with a group of very popular girls, and so it meant having to do a lot to keep up your popularity. So I was on the phone for excessive amounts of time. You have to look a certain way, dress a certain way, hang out at certain places even if you don't want to. So that took up a good chunk of time. And then if you're popular, then of course you get elected to leadership roles. So again, leadership is crucial for some reason in high-performing schools. I never quite understood why. But it's not thought of as service. It's just the thing you're supposed to strive towards. So I was elected to do things like be the class chair, be the drama club vice president. And then the year before, I had started to realize that this is kind of crazy when you're 14 or 15. So I went and spoke to one of my teachers and I said, could I drop one subject? I've been missing some of these classes. I don't think I can keep up. And to my great surprise, the teacher actually said to me, she was the French teacher, and she said, I will tutor you for free after class until you catch up. And she did. I know, she was incredibly kind. I caught up, so I felt like I just couldn't say no, right? You can't leave the class. But thanks to her kindness, that year, I got to participate in the French exchange program, where a French student came to live with my family, and then I went to France to live for a month. And then the same year, all of us in the humanities get to go to Italy for 2 weeks to learn about the Renaissance, because at high-performing school, you do not do field trips to the zoo. 80 girls go to Italy, to all these different cities, and the poor teachers who had to take care of us, that's how you learned about the Renaissance, live. And then, of course, on top of all this, the literature teacher is telling me, you should apply for the creative arts program. It is this special program for high-performing kids in literary arts. And then the debate teacher came and talked to me and said, you should join the debate team. You seem to be well-read. Now, who has time to read when you're doing all this? I'm not sure. So yes, that was when I was 15. So of course, so it looks like you should be overjoyed by having a wealth of external opportunities. This is the year I felt extremely burned out, miserable, and fairly depressed at a certain point because I wasn't sleeping or even having time to, do basic things. Yet everybody thought this was, I was just surprised, all these teachers saying you should do more. So I decided to say no. So I talked to the debate teacher. I said, no, I cannot join the debate team. I'm doing a lot of other things. And he proceeded to kind of tear me apart publicly at an interclass debate. I guess I thought, okay, I guess you're not happy that I didn't join the debate team. That's that. And then I produced a portfolio for the creative arts program, which the literature teacher kind of threw back and said, it's not good enough. And I said, this is the best I can do right now. I'm not going to apply. And then she said to me, you are a cop-out. I had to look up the dictionary for the meaning of that word, that you've basically not fulfilled your potential. I don't know, I got this long speech from her about not fulfilling my potential, being a cop-out, and I was like, look, I cannot do any more than I actually am doing. At some point, the drama club teacher is extremely upset with me. Why? Because I'm doing absolutely nothing as the drama club vice president. I mean, you're supposed to organize people and help the team. The solution I found was just to step down. That was probably the best thing I did that year. I just apologized to the whole club, and I said, look, I'm not fulfilling any of these duties. I'm going to step down. I need to focus on other things. And being popular is a non-negotiable. I never thought at age 15 that I should spend less time on the phone. My mother, of course, told me constantly that I was lazy because she never saw me studying, true enough. Yeah, but you're 15. Why would you sacrifice this? Come on. So instead, I spoke to another teacher and said, can I drop this other subject? And she said, you are getting the best grades in the subject. How can you drop it? So who cares whether you're interested or not? Keep going. So finally, okay, so I thought, all right, we'll try and stay alive and juggle these things. I think the breaking point for me, what was really hard, was the teacher coming to talk to me about this humanities research program. And she asked me, no, you get called out by the teacher after assembly and you think, oh dear, what did I do? And she says, why didn't your presentation get picked to be among the final showcase? I said, I don't know, ask the selection panel. I mean, and I was very sad because I had written about something I loved and the professor was happy and I was happy. But somehow that is just not enough, right? It's got to win an award. It's got to be part of the final showcase. Something is wrong if your presentation didn't make it there. So I was like, okay. So looking back at this, memory helped me understand why a lot of fear and terror come up sometimes when I'm actually just physically tired. It comes back to this weird place of when I actually sat with myself and just observed, oh, I'm physically tired, but yet there's all this other stuff coming up, what's going on? And I hear myself saying things like, you're gonna let everyone down, you've let all your teachers down. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where it comes from. And it's not true. So I can set that aside and go to bed. I've been sleeping a lot better. So that was one piece of the work. I also had to heal a lot of anger within myself toward teachers, right? Blaming them, oh, they asked for too much and so on. But it's like, well, you're part of this whole system. That's how you know how to encourage students to be their best or whatever. So just spending time trying to see things from their perspective, healing anger towards them, healing anger toward myself, internalizing this story of being someone who is a cop-out and a letdown, you know what, let it go. And finally, I think I was just left with my own attachment. That's what this is a picture of, really. Attachment to praise, attachment to reputation, attachment to fulfilling other people's expectations. And that's a hard one to work with. I was reminded a lot of the image from the Lamrim Chenmo I read once that said that attachment is like a fly in nasal mucus. It kind of feels like that. You're a fly stuck in nasal mucus. It's like, how do I get out of this? How did I get here? And you try and pull yourself up and your legs fall off. Oh, okay. But thankfully there are other antidotes. Well, the point is not to get into this to begin with, And I guess looking at it from a Dharma perspective, it's like when you have a lot of good karma ripen in a worldly way, it has zero value. It's like the cause of more misery. It's just the temporary absence of gross suffering. I was like, wow, all these things that we're taught are going to bring happiness, are actually a complete sham. So that helped me to remember to always generate a good Dharma motivation and dedicate towards that. I would not like the karma to ripen like this again. And also just looking at it from a this life kind of social perspective, I think any system where you give a tremendous amount of resource to a small group of people benefits nobody. I mean, let's not, the kids who are not getting the resources are of course suffering. Those in the middle, everyone forgets about. But even those getting the wealth of resources are deeply unhappy. So it's like, who is this system serving? No one. So anyhow, I wound up reading this book that kind of is the continuation. It's called Excellent Sheep, The Miseducation of the American Elite and the Way to a Meaningful Life. So it's about what happens when all the excellent high school sheep jump over the fence and get themselves to college to jump over more fences. And then someday they wind up becoming president. He does. So he looks at that kind of social cost that comes of the way the education is structured these days, and that have nothing to do with what His Holiness the Dalai Lama was talking about last night, which is the value of an education based on compassion and love. I think that is so sorely lacking in this world. And it's just wonderful that Geshe-la and so many others have been working on bringing that into the school system. So hopefully we will see that start to effect change. And for the rest of us who've been through some version of this or other, we get to educate ourselves now. We get to be our own teachers in love and compassion. It's never too late. And yeah, that's what we get to do.